Exactly.
Money Radio, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to get together with Laura Bramnick from TalkRealEstateAZ.com. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
Laura is an attorney. She is also a real estate agent and a consumer advocate. Laura works on residential, commercial, and land transactions. Laura holds an active Arizona real estate license. She's been a real estate investor, worked in the mortgage industry, a certified instructor with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, and she is an attorney specializing in real estate. For more information, TalkRealEstateAZ.com, that's the website, TalkRealEstateAZ.com, or call 480-624-2705. And Laura answers her phone, 480-624-2705. Laura, we've talked over the past couple of weeks about contracts and different people that sign on contracts and what their roles are. For example, a married couple, an unmarried couple, partners in an LLC. Very important to know that.
Very important.
But then the contract itself, no matter who's signing it, you've got to know what that thing is really saying.
Yeah. And it's not easy because real estate contracts, they're a little easier to understand, but if you ever look at loan documents or any kind of indemnity documents that are boilerplate drafted by the title company, it's very, very difficult, even if you read them, to understand what they mean. And so you really need to be sure you know what you're signing. And if you don't understand it, you need to have somebody interpret it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of people, see a lawyer. It's
and you can be a very smart person and not understand those contracts.
Oh, absolutely. You're talking about something that you may not have done before, or something that's not in your field. You can be a very smart person and not understand. Plus, in like real estate contracts, there's terms that are used like abbreviations or in acronyms, SPUDs, clues, BINSR, and
when they say SPUDs, they're not talking about potatoes.
No, they are not talking about potatoes. So you just want to make sure you understand what it is and what you have to disclose and not disclose and what these terms stand for.
What are some of these things? For those who don't know, what's a SPUD?
A SPUDS is a seller's property disclosure statement. And so that's required by Arizona law, that you disclose what you know about the property. And that means whether it's on a sewer or septic, or whether it's
and there is
whether you've had a roof leak,
there's
or
pretty much a checklist of standard disclosures.
There's a form that's really very good. It's several pages long, and it asks you all kinds of questions. And then
can a buyer add to the SPUDs? Ask for additional disclosures?
Yes, a buyer can definitely ask for additional disclosures, and that often happens. Let's say the buyer gets an inspection, and then there's some additional questions that come up as a result of the inspection. So that's very common to do that. Then there's something called a clues, which has to do with whether there's been an insurance claim on the property.
Okay.
And so let's say that you've had a flood, a pipe burst, or something that's, and it can be something usual or unusual, but
it could result in complications down the road.
Yes, it definitely. You want to know if there's been certain damage to the property. Just like you've been in a car accident, you want to know if the frame's been damaged, so to speak. It's the same idea, because some things affect the home or the property more than others, And then there's something called a BINSR, that's what the buyer, it actually stands for Buyer's Inspection Report. And after that's where the buyer can say, this is what I have questions about, and this is what I want fixed.
Okay.
So, and then, so that there's a whole system in place. Once the buyer offers the contract and the seller signs it, and then escrow's opened, then the CC&Rs and the bylaws, if there's an HOA, are disclosed. Then the buyer does their inspection. then the appraisal happens, if they're, so that there's a whole order of things. And once you sign that contract, there are certain timelines with the order. And so, once you sign it, there is pressure to perform, whether you're the buyer or the seller in certain respects.
That's that commitment that we've talked about.
Yeah, the buyer has many more ways to get out of the contract than the seller. And I will tell you that I see a lot of sellers in my office who've changed their minds, and they really are shocked at what repercussions can happen. They just say, isn't there a 3-day right of rescission? I just had my husband just died, or my wife just died, I really didn't know what I was doing. But the law is very strict about enforcing these. An example is that there's a case that was done several years ago, I think maybe even in the 60s or 70s, where the husband actually had surgery, was on pain medication, and he signed the contract. And there's no way he really could have understood it, but the court said that he was bound by it.
So important to understand what you're signing, the repercussions, the obligations, the commitments that are being made. I've said this before, the devil's in the detail.
The devil's in the details, and it can be very tedious to review them. But if you have a true advocate, they will go over them with you, just like when you go to your physician and you may not understand your diagnosis or what the medication,
Right.
The ingredients of the medication are. They will be your interpreter.
So Laura Bramnick, you can be the angel in the fine print.
Yes, I'll be your interpreter.
There you go. And it really is important to do this, because this is a major transaction. You cannot get it wrong. You cannot misrepresent in that contract, even if you do it unknowingly.
Exactly.
You sign saying you do know, so get it right.
Yes, and the courts will enforce it.
Laura Bramnick, TalkRealEstateAZ.com. By the way, for most real estate transactions that you work on, it may not cost anything extra to have a real estate attorney representing you in that real estate transaction.
Right. If there's a way for me to be paid through the commission rather than by direct fee from the client, I will advise the client of that.
This is just smart. 480-624-2705. 480-624-2705. Laura Bramnick from TalkRealEstateAZ.com. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Sinclair.